Good day everybody, and welcome back to Cilinix Crypto, and welcome to this new video about ETFs. It's a topic right now in the crypto world in Web3 that I care a lot about. I think there's some great opportunities with ETFs, and we have already seen some great opportunities with some of these coins, with some great rallies that they've had. So for example, this week, I'm recording this in advance for my vacation. But this week, for example, Litecoin did amazingly well. There's a lot of momentum. Probably doesn't only have to do with the ETF, but it certainly helps, right? So we're seeing some, and we actually made money on that in the Signal group as well. But in this video, I quickly wanted to go over all the ETFs that have a very high approval probability, right? So we're most likely going to see these in 2025. You can see them on the screen right here. And I'll give you my thoughts based on 3 criteria, whether I like them or not. All right, and those criteria will be whether there's going to be selling when the ETF comes in. So what we had with Bitcoin and Ethereum is that they had major private trusts by Grayscale. Those were converted into ETFs. And then we saw a lot of these people that had those trusts and institutions sell off through the ETF because the liquidity was higher, all right? That's bearish, all right? And we've seen with Bitcoin and Ethereum as well, Ethereum more so, that caused a lot of selling pressure. So we don't want too much of supply overhang when it launches. We're going to be talking about demand. That is very much subjective. Based on my experience in this cryptocurrency world, these ETFs are mainly based in the US, right? So it depends on which projects are very interested, are very popular, I guess, in the United States. And then second of all, we'll take a look at the chart, right? Is there actually a lot of room for growth? Is the ETF already priced in or not? And that's going to be relatively subjective. You could have a different opinion on that, but I will base it off of some good analysis. So let's get right into it. I will disable my webcam right here, so you can actually see the full screen. So let's get right into it. Now, first of all, Litecoin. My thoughts on Litecoin are not very positive. I don't think this is the best ETF. And I will tell you the 2 best ETFs that I think at this point of time. But this is not major. By the way, these approvals are not correct anymore. They've been updated in July and they're now higher. Most of them have 90% from Litecoin down to Avalanche. So Litecoin, Solana, XRP, Dogecoin, Cardano, Polkadot, Hedera, and Avalanche. Now, first one, Litecoin. Massive supply overhang. All right, if you actually check out Litecoin right here, what you can see is that Grayscale has about $250 million in supply overhang. All right, now that is closed, right? So the status is closed, but still, that's not something I'd like to see. That means a lot can be sold off when it actually turns into an ETF. Yeah, like I said, that's just not great. The demand, I think, for Litecoin can be fine. But if you take a look at the chart right here, I think a lot of the ETF is already priced in as well. It's still bullish at this point of time. I expect this to rally up higher. But in terms of risk reward, I don't think this is the ETF to look at, unfortunately, because I like Litecoin a lot. And I think there's great potential for some sort of a Bitcoin is gold, Litecoin is silver narrative. It could do well before the ETF. But after the ETF, I don't think this is going to do well. So I don't think this is the best ETF to buy. Second one, Solana. So when we take a look at Solana, Solana actually has a trust as well. I think it's a little bit smaller, but Solana also has about $90 million in a trust, relatively high. We're going to be see some selling pressure. However, I think demand for Solana is quite high, and I'm not certain if it's fully priced in. I'm actually at the current prices at 176. Look, we're within a bigger range, and we can certainly still see some downside within this range, right? So we can move within this. But I think it's not fully priced in, and I think there's a lot of demand in the United States for Solana. We've seen that in a lot of metrics. So I think Solana can do quite well, although I do think it's likely that after the ETF we will see some sort of a sell the news effect. And I'm a little bit afraid that Solana could see a similar fate as what we saw with Ethereum for some time. So for now, at the current prices, I'm relatively bullish on this, but I also don't think this is the best ETF. The best ETF, in my opinion, is XRP. And I know that sounds crazy, all right, because you know me as someone who is very realistic, and I think Ripple is wildly overvalued. But Ripple is doing a lot of great things right now. All right, first of all, they also don't have a massive trust. They have about $18 million in this Grayscale trust, so there's almost no supply overhang when the ETF launches. Ripple and XRP are extremely popular in the United States. That's great. And I think Ripple is actually doing a lot of things in acquisitions and in politics that will make it a better company and will make it interesting to buy it. All right, so for those reasons, do I think the ETF is priced in? Yes. However, I do think we can rally up higher into 4.5, $5. I think it's quite stable. So in terms of risk reward, I think XRP is the best ETF. And I'm a little bit surprised that I say that, but I think it's true. So those are my thoughts on XRP. Dogecoin, I'm not certain. Right, Dogecoin, I think what's interesting, like I think there's going to be some demand, but is there really going to be that much demand from ETF buyers for a meme coin? I'm not certain. I just don't think, like the main thing that I like about Dogecoin is that I think like it's still at the same price as right now since March 2025, while the likelihood of an ETF is much, much higher. So I think the ETF here is also not priced in. And therefore I think it's interesting, but I think this is only interesting for a short-term move before the ETF. Afterwards, I think there's too much uncertainty about whether there's actually going to be demand for this, and there's too much competition with other meme coins potentially getting ETFs afterwards as well. Cardano. Cardano, I am a little bit conflicted about. All right, Cardano does not have a trust, or at least I don't see it. I mean, it's a little bit strange because I thought it did have a trust, but I cannot find it at this point of time. Could I see it right here? I don't know. But I believe Cardano actually doesn't have a trust. If it does, it's not that major, if I remember correctly. But with Cardano, it's a little bit difficult because the price right now is quite high, right? So it's not as high as it was in November and December. So that's why I'm a little bit I think a little bit similar about Cardano as how I think about Dogecoin. Like Cardano, it's trading lower than December and January, while the fundamentals are more bullish. But fundamentally, Cardano is not doing great. It used to have a great community in the United States that is slowing down, that's decreasing. And fundamentally, Cardano as a network is just not doing great. So again, before the ETF, some sort of a rally ahead of it, I think is quite likely. From where remains the question. But after that, I also don't think this is the best ETF to buy. Polkadot is the last one we'll cover. Hedera and Avalanche, I don't know enough about to really say whether they're going to be interesting. I would say Avalanche is interesting because it's not priced in. It has a small community, unfortunately, but it's not priced in, and it's actually growing as a network. Hedera has a very strong community, but there's a major trust for that as well, I believe. And fundamentally, it's also not major, even though there is some institutional interest. So both of them, very tough to say. Polkadot I like, because Polkadot actually has a pretty strong community, whether you believe it or not. And I think the ETF, even though the probability of it getting an ETF is quite high, I think the ETF is in no shape or form priced in. Right? If you take a look at this, Polkadot right now is trading at the same levels as it was November 2024, August 2024, and even October 2023. So I think this is, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Polkadot, I think this is one of the coins that can actually rally a lot before the ETF. But I'll keep you updated on that as well. For now, those are my thoughts on the main ETFs that are most likely going to launch in 2025. Hopefully this video helps. There I am again. If it does, consider subscribing because I will still make more videos about ETFs as well. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye.